Welcome to the Recruiting Stories podcast, where we celebrate recruiting by exploring the stories of leaders and top performers by digging into their stories and understanding how recruiting has impacted their journey and their success. Guys, I'm so excited. This week we've got Chris Jolly, aka the Freight Coach. I'm sure you have seen Chris's content all over the web, across LinkedIn and other places as well. Chris and I sit down. We talk a little bit about his story and how recruiting has impacted his journey in the transportation world and led him to now coaching and teaching other transportation professionals how to succeed and how to grow in their professions. Training obviously is a huge piece of what's missing in the transportation industry today and why a lot of people fail, unfortunately. And we talk a little bit about that. We talk about mindset and how having the right mindset will be beneficial to your transportation career, and have a few fun stories in there as well. So if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me or Chris, and we would love to hear your feedback as well. Looking forward to hearing from you guys. All right, welcome to the Recruiting Stories podcast. I'm really excited about today. We've got Chris Jolly, aka the Freight Coach. I'm sure you've seen him on LinkedIn. He is the owner of CJolly Freight Consulting. Chris, thanks for being on, man.
Hey, Adrian, thank you so much for having me. I love what you're doing in this space and really bringing out the recruiting stories, because I think we all have them. I think it's very similar to freight brokers. There's some people out there that are spoken about in very high regards. And then adversely, there's some people have spoken in some very low regards. So thank you so much for really starting this out, man.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate the kind words. I'm thrilled to have you on. I know there's going to be a lot of people listening who obviously are in the transportation space, who are brokers, who are leaders. And for you, tell me, I guess, a little bit about, really what led you into the transportation world. Like, how did it start for you? Because, for me, obviously talking about recruiting, it always starts somewhere. So walk me into kind of where you first got interested in transportation.
I mean, I'm a son of a truck driver. My grandfather drove, my father drove, uncles drove. Like, it's just been around me my entire life. And, I took a little brief hiatus of, finding out who I wanted to be as a person in my early 20s. But I ended back up into it. And I moved out west about in 2011. And I moved to Reno, Nevada. And my older brother lived there at the time. And I had called a friend who lived out there and said, hey, I want to work in sales and I'm coming out west. What do you got for me? And he introduced me to a guy who was the ops manager for a freight brokerage, got hired over the phone, packed up my truck and headed west. So that's kind of how it all really started.
So let me loop back there real fast. The thing that I heard was, you were like, okay, interested in the industry, interested in sales, but you ended up connecting with a friend. So like you knew somebody who was connected in the industry. So it was kind of a referral. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, that's essentially what it was. Is his best friend was, or his roommate in college, was who he connected me with. And that's what it was, it's all about. And that, that's one thing that I kind of failed upon early on in my career. And we can kind of touch on that, but it's the power of networking is real. It really is. Whether a good recruiter or somebody out there, man, the power of your network is massive.
Yep. No, I love that. I love that point because, I've thrown out some stats. You might have seen them on LinkedIn where, over anywhere between, I guess, what industry you're looking at, 30% to 50% of incoming hires in any one company are from referrals. And so typically that means knowing someone within the organization, and that's crucial. That's key. And then the next highest was recruiters, right? So like if you can connect with two of those, someone in the company or someone who's well connected to the company, I mean, your chances of getting an opportunity go way up. And that's obviously what launched your journey. So that's cool.
No, definitely. And I mean, they always say it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Absolutely. Well, so, okay, you've been a manager as well. So you've been in a position where you've helped bring people on here as well. So talk to me about that. Tell me a little bit about, having been someone who's hired, obviously, you've moved a ton of freight. What do you look for, or what have you looked for in the past? And has that changed over time, especially in the world that we live today?
I think the biggest thing for me that always stands out is somebody's willingness to learn. Like, because when I'm interviewing somebody, what we would do is we would always have them come in and sit with us. And if you sat down with me for an hour and you didn't have any questions about what I just talked to you about, chances are this industry is not for you.
Right.
Like there's a lot of complex things that we're kind of throwing at you. And who knows, this isn't a perfect method. There is no perfect hiring method out there. But I wanted the people who were genuinely curious about this industry. I wanted them to ask me the why. Well, wait a second. Why do you do it that way? Why does this truckload move this way? Why is it loaded on this kind of trailer? I wanted you to get engaged because freight's stressful, and you need to truly love this industry to make it. Like if you make it past the first 6 months to a year, you're in it for life. Otherwise, this industry chews you up and spits you out. And I know it's not just a transportation thing. I'm sure there's other industries that are just like it. But to me, you got to love freight. And you have to really get up in the morning and be like, let's go every single day.
Freight is stressful. That might be the understatement of the year. I love that.
Yes, correct.
That's cool. So one of the big things that you said was learning. And I think that's so crucial. And that comes with a level of humility. And talking with different leaders within the industry and outside the industry, that's something that I've heard as a common thread over and over and over. It's like, man, you have to be humble enough to learn, but you also have to be curious to say like, hey, I don't know it all. So what don't I know? And how can I move forward?
Yeah.
I think that's crucial.
No, I agree. And kind of to tie back, I know you played college football there, man. You got to be a student of the game. Like you can't think that you get to a point and you just got it all figured out. Like I've been in this industry for 10 years. I've booked tens of thousands of truckloads in my career. I have made tens of thousands of cold calls in my career, and I'm still learning about it because this industry is constantly changing. Like it's the bare bones basics of it are never going to change, but you need to be willing to know that there's other ways of operating. And if it helps you grow your business or provide more value to your customers, that's what you need to be focused on at the end of the day, to me.
I think that's an amazing point because when I think we'll relate back to football as I do a lot of things.
Yeah.
The market doesn't care about what you've done in the past. And so what
Correct.
I mean by that is, while you should be proud of what you accomplish, I can remember a mistake I made as a young college football player. I was still pretty early, but I had made an impact enough that I was going to be a starter, and I was probably going to be a starter the next year. Well, the mistake I made was I thought it was probably just going to be like I was the guy now. Well, we had a transfer who came in from a bigger school and was a talented dude, and I had to compete for a spot for this guy, and I was offended. I was totally offended. Well, the market doesn't care. My coach knew that. My coach knew that if I can get a really talented individual to help us win games, well, that's what mattered. And I think the same can be said for transportation, right? The market might say it's going to do what it's going to do, and new technologies are going to come because they're going to try to improve processes. And I have to still be great at what I do, regardless of what's going on in the marketplace.
I agree. And, it's kind of like why I started my business in coaching people. And it's just like, and I use this analogy a lot as well. Tom Brady, 20 some years in the NFL, still practices every day, and he practices different defensive schemes. And it's not that he doesn't know how to react. He needs to stay comfortable and in that game time mindset. So when it is 4th and goal, he knows how to audible out properly. And that's what I provide in my sales training is we face the same objections all the time. But what I focus in on is getting you comfortable to when you are in the moment and you are given that objection, how do we navigate around it, or how do we audible out of it to make the most out of these phone calls and these interactions with our prospects?
And that's amazing, right? Because what you're doing is you're creating disciplines, right? And those disciplines, I can think of, when I played, your example of Tom Brady is perfect because, probably the best quarterback to ever play the game. Well, he still has a coach, he still has a trainer, he still shows up every single day because, if he didn't, well, suddenly he might slip, right? People might say, well, yeah, now you're washed up. Not because he doesn't know what to do or he's not capable, it's because he hasn't consistently had the disciplines in place.
Yes.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So tell me then, when you are coaching people, and maybe this would be a good chance for a lot of our listeners who might be younger guys or gals in the industry, right? You're looking back at your career. If you had to give some advice to your 20-year-old self, okay, I'm just getting started in the industry. What would that look like for you? What advice would you give yourself, as you were getting started as a 20?
Yeah, it's a two-part answer, but it's a brief two-part answer. The first one is the worst somebody's going to do is hang up on you. Okay.
Yeah.
Get that, accept that. The second thing is at the end of the day, don't take it personally that a complete stranger is rejecting what you're trying to do. Like, that's it. Like, you're never going to see them in real life anyways. So at the end of the day, if they don't like you and they don't want to work with you, that's it. Like, there's nothing more than that. And that was tough for me because I would take a lot of things personally early on, and that's one thing that if I was going back to myself, or if this was my thing not just transportation sales in general, the worst thing your prospects and customers are going to do is say no. And that's it. Don't take it personal.
Yeah. I think that's really, anybody who's done sales has experienced getting hung up on. You might even had somebody call you a name or something like that, but
a certain four-letter word.
Right. But guess what? After that, it's done, right?
Yes.
And if you pick up the phone and you dial again, there's one of those is going to be a successful call, and all of a sudden, your mindset is going to completely shift.
And that's all it boils down to me is that mindset. And it's not, because I tie a lot of things into athletics. I'm a former athlete growing up. I don't look like it now, but I used to be in athletics. I swear to God. But the mindset of the high performing athletes out there is they don't remember plays, good or bad. They don't remember them. They live in the moment. Like, it doesn't matter to Michael Jordan that he has the most missed game-winning shots in NBA history. Like, that does not matter to him at all. And it shouldn't matter to you either, in that sense that you could go on a cold streak of 150 to 200 no's. That's part of life. That's part of the industry. Accept that. And it's okay, but on the flip side, though, you need leadership to properly coach you through these situations, or a sales coach like myself to really help you deal with these situations, because it is daunting at times, but once you kind of get past that, Adrian, I think that's when you start seeing massive leaps in your career, not only in your career, but your personal life as well. Once you accept the fact that life's hard and you're not always going to win, but at the end of the day, the sun's going to rise tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay. And you got to be willing to accept the fact that it's not always going to work in your favor. And once you get there, once you start looking at life through that lens, I think everybody makes massive leaps.
Tell me more about that, because I love that idea of, because you talked about, okay, well, in work, right? That's going to be a place where you can get over that idea. Well, guess what? You're gonna keep dialing. You're gonna make another, but then that affects your life outside of work. Talk to me about that, because I think that is, think that's incredibly crucial. Because if you can master that, suddenly you're right. I've experienced that myself. When you can not worry about that pain or that rejection or whatever that is, well, you can apply that principle in nearly every other part of life. So talk to me about that.
I just think that, one thing that you'll deal with in transportation is, things are going to go wrong. Shipments are going to be late, and don't take it home with you. Like, it's not going to change the fact that your truck's running behind, or your customer might be upset with that, because those are in turn controllable situations, because once you have that communication with your customers, it kind of takes that away from it, and just get ahead of these issues. And, communication is such an often talked about strength, but underutilized strength. The power of communication is, I think, the most crucial step in your life, personally and professionally. Yeah. If you don't like something, say something about it. If something's going wrong, say something about it. Don't hold it. Don't try and hide issues. Don't do that. Because that's what helps you not take it home, is because you're ahead of it. You already know, and it's going to help you out the fact that it's going to be there when you get in there in the morning. But on the flip side, it was taken care of in the right way. And because we only have so much power as brokers, there's only so much we can do. But as long as you effectively communicate that to your customers, like you have nothing to worry about.
100%. I was explaining this to another guy to be on the podcast here, Zach Aaron. There's this idea that I read about called running into the storm. So the American bison, when when they see a storm, they run into the storm because they know that, the quicker we can get through that, the less amount of danger that we are in or stress that we will be under. So just essentially facing that problem head on as quickly as possible. And when I thought about that mindset, I said, man, really, if we could apply that in every area of our life, whether I need to talk with someone, I need to have a hard conversation, I need to deal with my own personal issue, handling that quickly and facing the music quickly, you won't regret it. So.
I agree with that wholeheartedly, man. Like that sums up your worst fears as a freight broker by how to tackle it right there. Is you just get ahead, rip the Band-Aid off and get ahead of it. Don't withhold information from your customers because you have one shot. I don't care if you do 1,000 shipments perfectly. If you mess one up, your customer is going to start thinking, how many of these shipments have been in this exact same situation? Right. So it's like, just get ahead of it. Customers, okay. Here's a big misconception. Customers know things go wrong. What they do not accept is that you don't tell them these things. So knowing this, why not just bring them up? Of course, they're going to be upset at shipments running late, but you know how to combat that conversation? Call the receiver. All right. They don't teach you this. Call the receiver because that's our customer's customer. If you go to your customer, the person who's paying running late, I already spoke to them. They're okay with this. They've already rescheduled it. Here you go. Your customer is going to be like, really?
Right.
You already took care of it? Okay, I'm fine. If my customer's fine, I'm fine.
Yep.
Voila.
Problem solved, you guys. Being proactive, right? That being proactive. And I always heard it called, thinking upstream, right? If I think upstream, what's going to happen? Then I can resolve that problem because I know which direction the river is going to flow, essentially. So,
I agree with that wholeheartedly, man. Like, and there's like, you can slap any different name you want on it, but at the end of the day, just do the right thing and communicate.
Exactly. I mean, honesty is always going to be respected, more than half truth, right?
Exactly.
So tell the truth and take ownership. I think that's crucial. Chris, man, I've enjoyed this conversation a ton. Absolutely love getting a chance to connect with you. I think you have a great insight. If people want to go and really learn more about you or get in contact with you about your coaching services, where should they go?
The best way to reach out to me directly is through LinkedIn. It's just Chris Jolly is on there. And otherwise, if you want to shoot me an email as well, it's just chris@thefreightcoach.com. I'll get back to you in a very timely manner. I don't like to make my customers wait, and you brokers now are my customers. And I just want to help elevate this industry, man. There's such, like, I have a deep love for this industry, and I just want to see it perform and have brokers get the reputation that I know that they deserve, because we do a lot of work. And let's change the way that people perceive us, though.
Love it. Chris Jolly, aka the Freight Coach, thanks for coming on Recruiting Stories. We appreciate you a ton.
Hey, thank you so much, Adrian.
Thanks for listening to the Recruiting Stories podcast. If you haven't yet, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Check us out on LinkedIn. Adrian Chapman and Cover 3 Consulting is our company page. Also check out our website, www.cov3consulting.com. Again, thanks for joining us, and we just simply want to remind you that you can change the world by putting people in a position where they can do the most good, and you do that by recruiting. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next time.